In this exercise, let's now next turn to data validation and VLOOKUP. Let's do such a thing that we are going to delete pine and elm from all these places in here, and we're also going to see that in the next table we have a number of woods: cherry, oak, pine, elm, ash, and ebony. We are going to use data validation and let the user pick his own 2 woods to make a bookshelf out of, and then we're going to use VLOOKUP and look up which are the current price and the projected inflation for the price of that wood. So we will need to give some names. Let's select these in here and give formulas. Create from selection, and remember again, the suggestion is wrong. We actually would need to give just the top row names. It means that this block here is wood, this block here is current cost per board foot, and this here is projected annual increase. And we actually need only this block for validation. And the next thing we're going to do is select the entire table, the blue area without the header, and give the name by hand. It's called Woods Table. Now we're going to go apply data validation first. So this thing is actually going to be empty as well, and we're going to let this validate from amongst the woods. So let's select these, give data validation. Remember, here we had to pick list more often than not, and as a source we had to write equals woods. Sorry, we made a mistake, so a good reason for using F3 key equals F3. It had to be with wood, so it's W. Aha, it's called wood in singular. Let's click OK. Now we can select, for instance, for the beginning, just pine and elm again. Okay, here we go. And or let's select some other tree, pine and cherry. And now let us have these reflect our choice. So let's just write equals C2 equals C2 equals C2 and equals C2. Okay, here it is. All the pines, and now D2 equals D2 equals D2 equals D2 and equals D2. Okay, now the next thing, let's delete these values in here. And let's use data validation. It goes like this: equals VLOOKUP equals VLOOKUP parenthesis begin. And now we want to VLOOKUP pine, so it's equals VLOOKUP parenthesis begin C2 from woods table. So it's semicolon. The entire table's name was given for VLOOKUP. Woods, and it also prompts a suggestion for us down here, so it's woods table. And now the column which contains the initial prices is second, so semicolon 2 and semicolon 0. Once again, remember, it was pine that we searched for, woods table, and it searches from the first column only. That was actually a constraint that VLOOKUP has. We're gonna actually learn something that also doesn't have this constraint later on. It searches from the first column, finds pine, and now gives back the second column, which is $5. And remember that that second column was preceded by 0. And the 0 meant that it looks up exactly. We have talked this over a couple of times, that there is something called inexact lookup that we'll be doing later on. Okay, so it's $5. Now we can actually do another VLOOKUP, but let's again consider an option. What if something is deleted from here? Again, we will be getting nasty errors, so let us use and right away be sure that there's going to be no errors. In that case, we are going to have to make, just as in the previous problem which had an invoice, we are here also going to have to do an if, which checks if this pine is not entered, if this is empty, then we will not be displaying an error message. Let's take this formula again with the double click. Let's go before VLOOKUP and let's write an if around it. So it's equals if parentheses begin, the checks that we're gonna do is if C2 equals quotation mark, if this is empty, semicolon, then we leave the price empty, but with price we have to leave it at 0 because otherwise it's gonna still end up badly for us, just as we did in an invoice, because then it doesn't start taking these quotation marks, which is empty text, and doesn't start trying to do anything with that. Okay, so it's a 0, and in the other case we will do the VLOOKUP. So if it's empty in C2, we leave a 0. Otherwise we do a VLOOKUP and leave the exact number for the cost of the wood. Okay, and now we can copy this for cherry, because you see the only thing that changed in here was this blue cell, and it moved from pine to cherry. So the woods table is a name, and names actually are like dollar addresses. They don't change at all if you copy. And anything else, the D2 was the only thing that really changed in here at all. Okay, and now we can do the same thing for the inflation. Remember, wood was in the first column, cost in the second for initial year, and inflation is in the third column. So we write again equals VLOOKUP parentheses begin, and we're looking up C2 again. We're looking it up from woods table, woods underscore table. It looks it up in the first column. We write semicolon and look for the result from the third column. And now comes the arbitrary the 0, and we are saying the 0 that has to be there, and now we're saying okay, and it gets that correct 2%. So the numbers are the same as we had initially, $5, 2% for pine. Cherry is a different tree, so that wasn't there in the first place. But now we're gonna do the check, you see, again, so that there will be no errors if anything is deleted. So we do an if in here again. We are doing an if. VLOOKUP worked nicely. So now we're doing an if, which checks if C2 equals quotation mark, if C2 is empty, semicolon. In that case, we leave a 0 as the inflation percentage. Otherwise, we do our VLOOKUP. So if has 3 parts. It checks whether C2 is empty, leaves a 0. If it's not empty, does the VLOOKUP. And right now it does the VLOOKUP. And now if we delete it, it's actually going to be all zeros, no errors. Let's copy this formula for cherry. And once again we see that only the blue D2 was the cell that was moving, woods table remained at place, and we had the formula nicely copied. And now we have the new prices and the new inflations. If we delete pine and cherry in here, or let's say we delete only pine, then we have a comparison of basically having only the labor costs if the wood is for free for us. So, for instance, such a thing if we delete. Nevertheless, we will not have errors. And now, let's do everything nicely with the formatting. We have to select this table in here, do, as formatting is always, under Control 1, do a Control 1, and here it is, border, non-outline. So we quickly reset the bordering, which went wrong. So we click on border, and just a very quick way, non-outline, and here it is,